Chapter 1: The Clockmaker's Secret. Nico Kim sat hunched over his workbench, eyes squinting against the glow of his magnifying lamp. The rhythmic tick-tick-tick of dozens of clocks filled the tiny shop, an orchestra of time echoing around him. Outside, the neon streets of Seoul buzzed with life, but in here, it was as though time had forgotten to pass. His fingers, long and nimble, manipulated the delicate gears of a battered antique pocket watch. Its casing, engraved with unfamiliar symbols, felt oddly warm in his palm. The strange man who had dropped it off earlier that day had spoken few words. He'd simply handed Nico the watch, a soft smile on his lips, and murmured, "Fix it. It will change everything." Then he'd vanished into the crowd, leaving Nico with a repair ticket scrawled in looping English letters that read only, Lee Sungo. Nico swallowed hard, twisting his screwdriver to loosen the inner plate. He'd seen countless timepieces in his 23 years, modern Swiss masterpieces, battered heirlooms, even cheap plastic watches, but this one was different. The second the inner plate lifted free, a tiny spark of electric blue light pulsed from deep within the watch's gears. Nico yelped, dropping his tools. A hum vibrated through the air, so subtle he felt it more than heard it. He leaned closer, heart hammering. Inside the watch's core was a gear unlike any he'd ever seen. Thin as a hair, spinning on an axis of blue light. Engraved on its surface were swirling symbols, beautiful and alien. "Okay, that's new," Nico whispered. He reached out to touch it, and the shop exploded with light. The world twisted around him. Shelves bent like heated plastic. The clocks on the walls spun backward, hands whirling faster and faster. The fluorescent lights overhead burst in a shower of sparks. Nico tried to scream, but the noise swallowed his voice. And then, with the suddenness of a snapped string, silence fell. Nico opened his eyes. Instead of the cluttered clock shop, he stood in the middle of a wide stone street under a canopy of lanterns. Crowds of people bustled past him in colorful hanbok. The air smelled of burning oil lamps, roasted chestnuts, and old wood. Above, a palace loomed, its tiled rooftops curling like dragon scales against a crisp night sky. His legs buckled. He dropped to his knees, palms slapping the ground. It was real. The ground was real. The chill of the night seeped through his jeans, and he blinked up at a pair of startled passers-by, a woman carrying a basket of silk and a young man in a black official's hat. Why is that man dressed like that?" the woman whispered. Nico glanced down at his modern t-shirt and ripped skinny jeans. He was a neon-colored stain on a Joseon-era painting. A low rumble rose behind him, shouts, pounding boots. Nico twisted around just in time to see a squad of men in dark armor rushing down the street, swords drawn. Their leader barked orders, voice sharp as a blade. "Find him. Search every stall, every alley." Before Nico could breathe, someone slammed into him from behind. Strong hands clamped over his mouth, dragging him into a narrow alley. Nico struggled, heart slamming against his ribs, but the man hissed into his ear. "Be still if you want to live." They pressed deeper into shadows until the guards thundered past. Only when the street quieted did the stranger let him go. Nico staggered back, gasping for air. The stranger stepped into the lantern glow, and Nico's breath caught in his throat. He was breathtaking. Tall and slender, clad in pale blue silk, his hair pulled into a high topknot secured with a silver pin. His eyes were sharp as obsidian, set under finely arched brows. His lips, pale and trembling, parted as he struggled to speak. "Who are you?" the man demanded. "And how did you appear out of thin air?" Nico gaped. I don't know where I am," he stammered. "Seoul? Where's Seoul?" The stranger stared at him like he'd sprouted wings. "Seoul?" he repeated slowly, as though tasting a foreign word. "This is Hanseong, the capital." Nico's knees wobbled. Hanseong, the ancient name for Seoul, which meant he was in the past. The stranger grabbed his wrist, eyes blazing. "Listen to me," he whispered fiercely. "They'll kill me if they find me. Help me hide, and I swear, I'll help you find your way home." Nico blinked, chest tight. He opened his mouth to demand more answers. But even as he formed the words, a wild thought flickered through his mind. Why do I feel like I've seen him before? The man's grip tightened. "Please, Nico swallowed hard and nodded. Chapter 2, A Noble Fugitive. Nico barely had time to process his own terrified nod before the stranger was dragging him deeper into the maze of narrow alleys. Their footsteps slapped against stone, echoing between mud-brick walls and wooden storefronts. Overhead, lanterns swung gently, casting shifting gold patterns across Sungo's pale face. Nico struggled to keep up, his sneakers slipping on the slick cobblestones. "Wait, slow down," he gasped. The stranger spun on him so suddenly that Nico stumbled backward, colliding with a stack of empty crates. The man's eyes were wild, pupils blown wide with fear. "I can't slow down," he hissed. "They're hunting me. And if they find you with me—" He didn't finish the sentence. Instead, he seized Nico's hand again and pulled him into a shadowed doorway. Nico's heart raced as the man pressed him against the wooden door, one arm braced beside Nico's head as he peered into the street. Nico couldn't help noticing how close their faces were, how the stranger's breath fanned across his cheek, warm and faintly scented of mint and something floral. "Who are you?" Nico whispered. The stranger glanced at him, lips pressed into a hard line. "My name is Lee Sungo." Nico blinked. That name, it was written on the repair ticket for the pocket watch. "Wait, Lee Sungo." Sungo's eyes snapped back to him. "How do you know my name?" Nico opened his mouth, closed it again. How could he possibly explain that he'd been fixing a watch in the future with Sungo's name attached to it? "It's complicated," Nico said finally. "I think I'm from 200 years in the future?" Sungo stared at him as though he'd sprouted antlers. "The future?" "Yeah," Nico croaked. "Like airplanes, cell phones, TikTok. The 21st century." "Soul." Sungo blinked once. Twice. Then he did something completely unexpected. He laughed. It wasn't mocking. It was small and startled, as though laughter were the only thing keeping him from crumbling. "I must have hit my head," he murmured. "Of course. I'm hiding from assassins, and I find a man from the future." He rubbed a trembling hand over his mouth. Nico, overwhelmed, could only watch the flicker of exhaustion and fear in Sungo's eyes. "Why are they after you?" Nico asked gently. Sungo hesitated. Then he leaned closer, voice dropping to a whisper so faint Nico had to strain to hear. "Because they think I'm a traitor. They say I'm plotting to overthrow the king. But I'm not." Nico swallowed. "Then why are they accusing you?" Sungo looked away, throat bobbing as he swallowed. "Because I know something I shouldn't. Something about the future." Nico's eyes widened. "The future? How could you possibly?" But Sungo cut him off, gripping his arm so tightly that Nico winced. "Listen to me. Before all of this happened, I kept having dreams, visions, and in every one of them, I saw your face." Nico froze. "My face?" Sungo nodded, sweat shining at his temple. "Standing beside me in front of a broken clock. Always the same clock, gears scattered like stars. I didn't know what it meant, until tonight." A chill rolled down Nico's spine. The broken clock, like the pocket watch. Before he could respond, voices echoed down the alley. Guards searching methodically, torches bobbing like angry fireflies. Sungo grabbed Nico's sleeve. "Come on, we have to keep moving." They slipped through twisting alleys, ducking behind barrels and laundry lines. At one point, Sungo pulled Nico so close that he felt the pounding of Sungo's heart against his chest. "You're trembling," Sungo whispered. "Of course I'm trembling," Nico hissed back. "I'm in a historical drama and apparently being hunted." Sungo's lips curved in the faintest smile, even as his eyes stayed sharp. "Your world must be strange if you can joke in a moment like this." Finally, they burst into a wider street illuminated by dozens of lanterns. Sungo held Nico back with an outstretched arm, scanning the shadows. "There's somewhere we can hide," he said. "A place where even the royal guards don't dare look." Nico panted, wiping sweat from his brow. "Where?" Sungo met his eyes, the lantern glow reflecting gold in his dark irises. "The royal library, deep beneath the palace." Nico blinked. "You want me to break into a royal palace? Are you insane?" Sungo's gaze softened. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a tender murmur. "I don't think I am. Not if you're real." Nico swallowed hard. "Why do you trust me so easily?" Sungo gave him a weary, trembling smile. "Because I think you're the man the stars sent to save me. And though every rational thought in Nico's brain screamed that this was madness, he found himself whispering back, "Okay, let's go." And together they disappeared into the shadows, bound by secrets older than time itself. Chapter 3: The Prophecy Scroll. They moved like shadows through the palace grounds, ducking between darkened courtyards and slipping beneath hanging silks that fluttered in the breeze. Nico followed Sungo so closely, he nearly stepped on the back of his silk shoes more than once. The palace felt enormous, an endless labyrinth of red pillars, carved dragons, and painted ceilings that seemed to watch them as they passed. It was surreal. Here he was, in the Joseon Dynasty, sneaking through the king's palace like a character in a historical drama. Part of his brain wanted to panic. Another part felt a thrill buzzing through his veins. They paused behind a massive folding screen painted with mountains and cranes. Sungo's breath was fast and shallow. "We're almost there," Sungo whispered. "The library entrance is hidden beneath the East Pavilion." "This is absolutely insane," Nico muttered. "Do you realize how insane this is?" "Yes," Sungo said grimly. "But we have no choice." Moments later, Sungo led him into a quiet pavilion bathed in silver moonlight. A pair of stone lions stood guard at the top of the steps. Nico tried to move quietly, but the wooden floor creaked beneath his sneakers. Sungo approached a carved wooden wall and pressed his palm against a specific panel. There was a soft click, and a narrow section of wall slid inward, revealing a steep stairwell spiraling into darkness. "Whoa," Nico breathed. "Secret passages. This is seriously next level." Sungo gave a small, breathless laugh. "You sound like a child." "I'm a time traveler, apparently. I think I'm allowed a little awe." Sungo reached for his hand. "Stay close. There are torches below." Together, they descended into cool stone tunnels. The stairwell opened into a vast underground chamber. Lanterns flickered along the walls, illuminating shelves and scroll racks that stretched into the shadows. "Holy," Nico murmured. "Is this all books?" "Knowledge forbidden to most people," Sungo said softly. "Ancient records, prophecies, secrets the royal family has kept for centuries." Nico stared at the shelves, awe swirling inside him. He thought about the dusty archives in his old university library. They suddenly seemed quaint compared to this labyrinth of secrets. Sungo guided him deeper between the shelves until they reached an ornate wooden chest locked with 3 metal latches. Sungo knelt, pulling a slim silver pin from his hair. "Where did you learn to pick locks?" Nico asked, incredulous. Sungo shot him a dark look. "You think noble sons are taught only poetry and calligraphy? My father had many expectations." A final click and the chest swung open. Inside lay a single scroll tied with a black ribbon. Sungo hesitated, then lifted it out and carefully unrolled it on a low table. Nico leaned closer and stopped breathing. Drawn in delicate black ink was a portrait of Sungo standing beside Nico. Even though the artwork was in traditional Joseon style with stylized eyes and flowing robes, there was no mistaking the modern haircut, the shape of the face. It was him. Behind them, a broken clock hovered in the air, gears falling like flower petals. Below the figures were lines of Hanja, the ancient Chinese characters once used in Korea. Sungo's voice was barely a whisper. "It says, the man from days ahead shall stand beside the moon's sun. Together they shall save or doom the kingdom." Nico's mouth went dry. "Save or doom?" Sungo nodded, staring at the scroll as though it might bite him. "I've read it 100 times. My father found it years ago. He believed it was nonsense. But then, I started having visions of you." Nico took a shaky step back, running both hands through his hair. "Okay, this is way beyond fixing a broken watch. How is this possible? Why am I in your prophecy?" Sungo lowered the scroll, his dark eyes burning with something desperate. "I don't know, but I think you're here to change everything." Nico stared at him, chest tight. "And if I mess it up?" Sungo reached across the table, clasping his trembling fingers around Nico's. His hands were warm despite the chill of the underground chamber. "Then we figure it out. Together." Nico swallowed hard. He wanted to deny it all, to pretend he was dreaming, that he'd wake up back in his cluttered clock shop. But Sungo's hand was so real, his grip so firm. "Why me?" Nico whispered. "I'm not a hero. I'm just a watch repair guy." Sungo smiled faintly, though worry still darkened his eyes. Sometimes the stars choose the people who least expect it. For a long moment, they sat there in the flickering lantern light, staring at the scroll that seemed to have reached across centuries to bind them together. And though fear twisted in Nico's chest, he couldn't deny the small, reckless spark in his heart, the feeling that he was exactly where he was meant to be. Chapter 4: Falling for the Future. For the next 2 days, they hid in the abandoned quarters of an old palace servant, tucked behind a false wall in one of the rear storage buildings. The space was small, barely enough for 2 sleeping mats, a water basin, and a hidden trapdoor to the tunnel leading to the royal library. But it was safe. Outside, the palace buzzed with tension. Rumors spread like wildfire. A nobleman accused of treason had vanished into thin air. The guards doubled. Servants whispered behind sleeves. The king had issued a bounty. But in the quiet shadows of their hiding place, Nico and Sungo created a world entirely their own. Sungo found him clothes. Rough, faded hanbok from a servant's trunk. Nico felt ridiculous in them. Stiff fabrics, loose sleeves. But he had to admit it was better than sticking out like a glowing sore thumb. Every day, Sungo taught him how to bow properly, how to hold chopsticks the Joseon way, how to walk with his hands behind his back so he looked like a scholar instead of a street kid from the future. And at night, under the soft glow of an oil lamp, they talked about Seoul, modern Seoul, with its coffee shop, sky trains, and blinding lights. Sungo listened with rapt attention, like a child being told stories of magic. Nico described skyscrapers scraping clouds, food delivered in minutes, men holding hands in the open. Sungo leaned back, eyes distant. In your world, can 2 men love each other freely? Nico hesitated, then nodded. Not always easily, but yeah, it's not illegal. No one gets hanged for it. Sungo turned toward him. The oil light painted soft shadows across his face, and something flickered in his eyes. Hope, maybe, or longing. I envy you, he whispered. Nico opened his mouth to respond, but the words caught. He looked at Sungo then. Not just the nobleman or the fugitive, but the person who had held his hand in the darkness, risked everything to protect him, trusted him from the first breath. There was something magnetic about him. The calm he carried under pressure. The way he never looked away when he spoke. The small crinkle at the corner of his eyes when he smiled. That night it rained. A soft, steady drizzle that blurred the palace walls and muted the world. They sat under the eaves, shoulder to shoulder, watching the droplets dance on the stone path. Nico pulled the borrowed cloak tighter around himself, shivering slightly. Sungo moved closer, wordlessly draping a second layer over his shoulders. Their hands brushed. Neither moved away. I keep wondering, Sungo said softly. If you're coming here, is fate? Nico swallowed. I don't believe in fate. I believe in gears and screws and cause and effect. Sungo turned to him, his voice barely more than breath. Then how do you explain this? Nico didn't have an answer. He turned to look at Sungo, really look, and in that moment the world shrank to a single heartbeat. It was Sungo who leaned in first. His movement so gentle Nico almost didn't register it until he felt the press of soft, warm lips against his own. It wasn't a kiss of desperation or heat. It was slow, uncertain. An unspoken question wrapped in a whisper of touch. Nico's eyes fluttered closed. His heart stuttered. He kissed back. When they finally pulled away, neither of them spoke for a long time. Then Nico stood abruptly, pacing toward the rain, trying to catch his breath. I shouldn't have done that, he muttered. I shouldn't, we shouldn't. Sungo didn't look hurt, just calm. Because you're from another time? Yes, because I can't stay here. Because you can't come with me. Because this moment, it can't last. Sungo rose slowly, his eyes never leaving Nico's. Then let it last for tonight. Nico looked at him. The rain dripped from the edge of the roof, glimmering in the lamplight. Time, for once, felt frozen. You make it hard to walk away, Nico whispered. Sungo stepped forward, so close their foreheads nearly touched. Then don't. And though Nico knew he had no future in the century, no place, no papers, no home, he stayed. Just for that night. Because sometimes, in the space between two ticking seconds, love decides to take root. Chapter 5, The Timekeeper's Clan. Morning light sliced through the cracks in the wooden wall, painting golden bars across the floor. Nico woke slowly, blinking at the unfamiliar ceiling. For a moment, he thought he'd dreamed it all, the clocks, the palace, Sungo's soft kiss. Then he felt the warmth of a body curled beside him. Sungo lay on his side, still asleep, one arm draped loosely over Nico's waist. His hair had slipped from its topknot during the night, spilling across his face like silk ribbons. Nico stared, heart aching with an emotion he couldn't name. I can't stay here. But the thought felt like a knife twisting in his chest. Later that morning, Sungo led Nico through a hidden door behind a screen and back into the tunnels beneath the palace. There's someone I need you to meet, Sungo said as they walked. Another hidden library? Nico asked dryly. Secret map? Maybe a magical tiger that grants wishes? Sungo shot him a look somewhere between fond and exasperated. No. A person. He's been waiting for you. That's not ominous at all, Nico muttered. They reached a junction in the tunnel, a vast chamber lit by a single lantern swinging from an iron chain. The walls were lined with scroll racks, but these were older, covered in layers of dust. A figure stepped out of the shadows. Nico recognized him instantly. The man who'd given him the pocket watch in his shop. Except here, the stranger wore Joseon robes dyed the deep blue of royal officials. His hair was threaded with silver. His eyes shone like polished glass, ageless and sharp. Nico Kim, he said softly. Welcome at last. Nico stumbled back, grabbing Sungo's sleeve. You're the one who started all this. The man inclined his head. I am known as Jiwon. I serve the timekeepers. Timekeepers, Nico echoed. What, like time police? Are you going to arrest me for messing up history? Jiwon's mouth curled into a humorless smile. That depends on your next choices. Sungo stepped forward, jaw set. He's not a threat. He's here because of me. Jiwon gave Sungo a piercing look. Indeed. And that's precisely the problem. He turned back to Nico, voice soft as falling snow. Sungo is not meant to exist. Nico blinked. What the hell is that supposed to mean? Jiwon sighed. In the original flow of history, Sungo was never born. His father, Minister Lee, was executed before marrying Sungo's mother. But a ripple in time altered that event, allowing Sungo's birth. His presence here creates dangerous fractures in the future. Sungo stiffened beside him. I'm not real. Jiwon's eyes softened. You're real, Sungo. More real than you know. But your existence changes everything. Wars, treaties, inventions, all are different because of you. And one day, your bloodline produces a man who will invent a cure that saves millions in a plague yet to come. Nico felt his world tilt. So, Sungo has to live. Right? Jiwon nodded slowly. Yes. He must live. But he also must return to his time. Otherwise, history collapses. Sungo swallowed hard. So if I stay with Nico? The future burns, Jiwon said quietly. Nico's throat closed up. But I can't just let him go. There has to be another way. Jiwon shook his head. Time is a delicate weave. Your love risks unraveling it completely. Nico felt Sungo's hand slip into his. His fingers were trembling. I'm willing to go back, Sungo whispered. But only if Nico stays safe. Jiwon studied them both, expression unreadable. You would sacrifice your own happiness for him? Sungo gave a tiny sad smile. He's the only person who's ever looked at me and seen more than my father's politics. More than prophecy. Nico blinked away sudden tears. Sungo, but Jiwon lifted a hand. Enough sentiment. Listen carefully, both of you. You have one chance. Sungo must return through the portal. If he does, the timeline repairs itself. But know this, if you try to remain together, the timekeepers will intervene. Nico felt anger blaze through him. So we're just supposed to give up? After all of this? Jiwon stepped closer, lowering his voice. Not give up. Endure. Because if the stars wish it, you might find your way back to each other. He reached into his robes and pulled out the antique pocket watch, its delicate gears glinting in the lantern light. Take this, Nico. When the time is right, it will guide you. Nico took it with trembling hands. Jiwon's eyes softened for the first time. I'm sorry, truly, but love sometimes must wait for the right moment. Sungo turned to Nico, his expression raw. If I go back, promise me one thing. Anything, Nico whispered. Promise you'll come find me. Nico tightened his grip on Sungo's hand, voice cracking. I promise. And deep in the palace tunnels, as ancient secrets echoed around them, Nico realized the truth. Their story was far from over. Chapter 6, A Prince and Soul? The world was dissolving around them. Blue light spun in spirals as Nico gripped the pocket watch. He felt Sungo's fingers locked around his own, felt the weightless swoop in his stomach as time itself seemed to break open like a glass window. Please let this work. Please let us both make it through. A final snap of electric energy and they fell forward, tumbling onto cold tile. Nico groaned, rolling over. His back slammed into metal shelving. The air smelled like cleaning products, instant noodles, and something vaguely fishy. Sungo lay sprawled beside him in full silk robes, hair a tangled mess. His eyes fluttered open and went wide as he stared around them. Fluorescent lights. Neon signs outside the window. A line of plastic-wrapped snacks beside his head. They were in a convenience store. Sungo's voice broke into a hoarse whisper. What is this place? Nico scrambled up, grabbing Sungo's arms. Okay, don't freak out. But it was already too late. Sungo staggered to his feet, eyes huge. He pointed in horror at the automatic sliding door as it hissed open for a customer. The wall moved by itself. Nico hissed, shoo. An elderly woman pushed past them, giving them both a suspicious look. Sungo, undeterred, spotted the steaming ramen machine and darted over to poke at it with fascinated wonder. This kettle has lights in it, he exclaimed. And it sings. It's a ramen cooker, Nico groaned. Don't press any more buttons. But Sungo had already pushed half the display. Hot water sputtered everywhere. Minutes later, Nico dragged him outside, apologizing profusely to the store clerk while wiping ramen broth off Sungo's sleeve. They emerged into a neon-soaked street. Traffic roared past. Giant LED billboards flashed above them, advertising cell phones and bubble tea. Music boomed from passing cars. Sungo stood frozen, lips parted, staring up at a 20-story screen showing a K-pop music video. Are those gods? He whispered. No, that's Neo Dream, Nico said. A boy band. Sungo blinked. Boy band? We'll talk later. Nico found him a baseball cap and an oversized hoodie from a street vendor. Sungo flinched as the vendor scanned the price with a barcode scanner, clutching Nico's arm. Is she casting a spell on me? No, it's technology. Oh my God. You're impossible. They weaved through Seoul's bustling night streets. Sungo's eyes darted everywhere. Neon lights, taxis honking, flashing crosswalk signals. The man who'd once calmly faced palace assassins now nearly jumped out of his skin when a subway train thundered by underground. Nico couldn't help laughing, despite himself. Okay. Stop looking at everything like you're about to duel it. Sungo shot him an indignant look. Your world is terrifying, says the guy who fought off guards with swords last week. They reached Nico's small studio apartment. Sungo stepped inside cautiously, glancing around the narrow space. One bed, a desk buried in watch parts, shelves crowded with books and spare clock faces. Sungo tilted his head. So, you live in a single room? Thanks for that, Nico muttered. Yes. Welcome to modern housing prices. Sungo walked to the window, staring down at the glowing city. Your soul. It feels alive, like it's breathing. Nico watched him, heart twisting. There was something unbearably beautiful in seeing Sungo lit by neon. Hair brushed back under the hoodie. Sungo turned, voice soft. In your world, can two men love each other openly? Nico swallowed. It's better than it was. Not perfect, but we can try. Sungo took a step closer, his eyes deep and vulnerable. Then I want to try. He lifted a hand, brushing Nico's cheek. Nico's chest squeezed tight as Sungo leaned in and pressed a gentle kiss to his lips. Nico melted into it, gripping the front of Sungo's hoodie. For a moment, it was just the two of them, floating in a world of neon and possibility. But reality crashed back fast. A soft beep sounded from the desk. Nico looked down and froze. The pocket watch sat on his desk, gears spinning wildly. And beside it stood Jiwon, just standing there, in Nico's apartment. Sungo jerked away from Nico, eyes wide. How did he? Jiwon held up a hand. There's no time to explain. The timekeepers are already here. They're coming to erase you both. Nico's blood went cold. Erase us? Jiwon's eyes glimmered with something like pity. If Sungo remains in this time, your entire world begins to collapse. Sungo's hand slipped into Nico's, gripping tight. Then we'll fight them. Jiwon shook his head sadly. You cannot fight time. Nico looked at Sungo and saw the fear and determination blazing in his eyes. There's got to be a way. Nico squared his shoulders. We'll find it. Jiwon sighed. Then you have precious little time left. And with that, he vanished, like a ripple in still water. Nico sank onto the edge of his bed, gripping Sungo's fingers. Sungo knelt before him, pressing his forehead to Nico's knee. Even if it means the end of everything, I would rather stay here with you. Nico choked on a sob. Don't say that. Don't make me choose between you and the whole damn world. Sungo lifted his head, eyes shimmering. Then let's find a way to have both. Outside the window, neon lights pulsed like beating hearts. And in that fragile silence, Nico realized he would tear apart time itself if it meant not losing Sungo. Chapter 7, The Ripple Effect. Seoul was dazzling at dawn. Sunlight spilled over glass towers, reflecting off endless windows, bouncing across chrome cars lined up in early traffic. But Nico barely noticed the glow. He sat at his workbench, hands trembling as he tried and failed to focus on the disassembled pocket watch. Gears lay scattered like silver confetti across a velvet cloth. Sungo hovered beside him, dressed in borrowed jeans and a white t-shirt, hair tied back into a loose ponytail. The sight would have been funny if it didn't feel like the end of the world. You haven't slept, Sungo murmured. Nico scrubbed a hand over his face. Hard to sleep when some cosmic time cops might show up to erase us from existence. We still have time, Sungo said firmly. That's the one thing we don't have. Nico slammed a tiny screwdriver onto the desk, sending springs rolling away. He dropped his head into his hands, trying to keep his breath even. I thought bringing you here would fix everything. I thought maybe we could just be. Sungo gently tilted his face upward. And we still can. If we find a way. Nico gave a bitter laugh. Unless you've got a time manual hiding under your shirt, I'm pretty sure we're screwed. A loud knock rattled the apartment door. Sungo stiffened. Nico froze, every hair on his body standing up. A voice came through the thin metal door, eerily calm, impossibly cold. Nico Kim. Lee Sungo. Open the door. Nico grabbed Sungo's hand and pulled him into the bathroom. Get in the tub. Why the tub? Sungo demanded. Because it's the only place with a metal shell that might block scanning tech. Sungo stared at him. That sounds entirely made up. It probably is. Get in. They scrambled into the bathtub just as the lock on the apartment door clicked. Two figures stepped into the living room. Both wore sleek black suits, white shirts buttoned to the throat. Their hair was stark silver, identical faces calm and expressionless. Nico peered through a sliver of the bathroom door. His pulse thundered. The first agent spoke into a slim, glass-like device. Target confirmed. Ripple effect escalating. Timeline is destabilizing. The second agent glanced around the apartment. Prepare extraction. Sungo shifted beside Nico, voice barely a whisper. We cannot let them take us. No kidding, Nico hissed. We have to fight. You don't fight time assassins, Sungo. Then how do we win? I don't know. Nico felt panic clawing up his throat. But then he remembered Jiwon's words, when the time is right, it will guide you. He looked down. The pocket watch sat in his hoodie pocket, its gears glowing faint blue. The agents moved closer to the bathroom. Thermal readings indicate presence. Confirm. Nico's heart slammed into his ribs. Sungo's fingers curled around his. Whatever happens. I regret nothing. Nico bit his lip so hard it bled. Same. He pulled out the pocket watch and flipped it open. Blue light erupted in a sudden, blinding pulse. The entire apartment shuddered. A crack split the air like glass breaking. When the light faded, they were no longer in the bathtub. They stood in an empty, white void stretching into infinity. The floor, the ceiling, the air, it all glowed softly like starlight trapped in ice. Jiwon stood a few feet away, his robes swirling as if moved by invisible wind. You activated the watch too early, Jiwon said, shaking his head. Now you've pulled yourselves into the time nexus. Nico glanced around wildly. The what now? Jawon sighed. This place exists outside of time. Here, no seconds pass. No years fall. It's the only place the timekeepers can't touch you. Sungo swallowed. Then we're safe. Temporarily, Jawon corrected. But you cannot stay. The longer you remain here, the more unstable your bodies become. And the more the timeline fractures. Nico clenched his fists. So what do we do? Jawon stepped closer, voice dropping to a near whisper. There may be one solution. A dangerous one. I'm listening, Nico said immediately. Jawon studied them both, his eyes sad. A rewind. We send Sungo back to his proper time, but we erase all memory of you from his mind. It's the only way to repair the timeline entirely. Sungo staggered backward. No. Nico felt as though someone had punched him in the chest. Erase his memory? It's the only way, Jawon said gently. If Sungo remembers you, he'll search for you. And that alone will fracture history. Your connection is too strong. Sungo grabbed Nico's shoulders. I won't forget you. I can't. Nico blinked back tears. I can't lose you either. Not like this. Jawon's voice was soft. Love is powerful, Nico. But sometimes love demands sacrifice. Sungo turned, eyes blazing. There has to be another way. Jawon hesitated. There is one other possibility. Risky, but it would keep your memories intact. Tell us, Nico demanded. Jawon drew a slow breath. If both of you enter the rewind together, bound by the same anchor, the pocket watch, you might both return to Sungo's time. Your memories would remain, but you'd be trapped in the past forever. Nico felt his head spinning. So either I lose you, or I stay in the past? Jawon nodded gravely. Those are the choices. But decide quickly. The timekeepers are already hunting you across the timelines. Sungo took Nico's face in his hands. If you choose to return with me, you may never see your family, your future, your world again. Nico stared at him, heart in his throat. And if I stay here, you vanish from my life like you never existed. Sungo closed his eyes. I would rather live one lifetime with you than 100 without. And as Jawon watched silently, the weight of the universe pressing down on them, Nico realized he had to make the most impossible decision of his life. Chapter 8: The Choice of Eternity. Silence filled the time nexus, heavy and electric as though the stars themselves were holding their breath. Nico stood frozen, feeling as if the very floor beneath him might crack open. Sungo still held his face, thumbs gently brushing tears Nico hadn't realized were falling. Jawon waited a few steps away, arms folded within his swirling robes. The timeline is fraying as we speak, he said quietly. You must choose. Sungo stared into Nico's eyes, his own dark and shimmering like ink in moonlight. I'm not afraid, he whispered. Wherever you go, I'll follow. Nico shook his head, voice hoarse. You can't say that. It's my life too. My family. My friends. My world. Then stay, Sungo pleaded. Stay with me. Come back to my time. We'll find a way to live. I don't care how hard it is. Nico stared at him. 1,000 images flashed through his mind. His cluttered workshop, dust motes dancing in a sunbeam. His mother's voice on the phone, nagging him about eating enough vegetables. The taste of coffee from the corner cafe. And Sungo's smile, lit by neon. The idea of never seeing his own time again felt like tearing out a piece of himself. But the idea of Sungo vanishing forever felt worse. If I stay, I might never see the people I love again, Nico whispered. Sungo lowered his forehead against Nico's. I know. And I can't ask you to do that. But if you choose your time, please remember me. Even if I forget you. Nico let out a choked laugh. As if I could ever forget you, you stubborn, time-traveling nobleman. Jawon cleared his throat gently. If you choose to stay together in the past, you both keep your memories. But you'll never be able to return to the 21st century. And if I go back alone? Nico asked. His voice cracked on the last word. Then Sungo will be rewound, Jawon said softly. And he will not remember you. Nico felt as though the walls of the nexus were pressing in. How do you choose between love and everything else you've ever known? Sungo suddenly smiled. A sad, beautiful smile that twisted something deep in Nico's chest. I've spent my whole life following my father's orders. The court's rules. The whispers of prophecy. The only thing I ever chose for myself was you. Nico closed his eyes, trying to breathe. You're asking me to give up my entire future. Sungo cupped his face again. No. I'm asking you to choose the life that makes you happiest. Even if it's not with me. Don't say that. Nico burst out. Stop making it easy for me to walk away. Sungo's voice broke. Because if I make it hard, I'll beg you to stay. A silence fell between them, so vast it felt like centuries. Finally, Nico drew a shuddering breath. He opened his eyes, tears streaming freely. I choose you. Sungo blinked. Nico. I choose you, Nico repeated, louder this time, gripping Sungo's robes as though he might vanish. I don't care if I'm stuck in the Joseon dynasty. I'll learn how to wear those stupid robes and bow 100 times a day and eat kimchi for breakfast. As long as you're there. Sungo's lips parted, trembling. You'd give up your world for me? Nico let out a watery laugh. My world is wherever you are. Sungo choked out a sob and crashed forward, wrapping both arms around Nico's shoulders. Nico buried his face in Sungo's neck, clutching him so tightly his fingers ached. Jiwon's voice broke softly into their embrace. Very well. The decision is made. He lifted the pocket watch, now glowing as bright as a star. Both of you place your hands on it. I will anchor you together and send you back. Sungo pulled back just enough to press his forehead to Nico's. Are you sure? He whispered. Nico nodded firmly, despite the tears shining on his cheeks. No regrets. Sungo's answering smile was radiant. Then let's go home. They both reached out, palms resting atop the watch's golden surface. Jiwon murmured an incantation under his breath. The world began to swirl again, colors bending, lights exploding, reality stretching like molten glass. As the time nexus dissolved around them, Sungo held Nico's gaze. No matter the century, he vowed, voice carrying through the chaos, I will find you. And I'll be waiting, Nico said, smiling through tears. And then time cracked open and swallowed them whole. Chapter 9, A New Dawn in Joseon. Nico gasped as his feet slammed into solid ground. Warm air wrapped around him, scented with pine and blooming lotus. Birds shrieked overhead, and somewhere close by came the distant murmur of temple bells. He blinked, vision swimming, and realized he stood beneath a canopy of vibrant green leaves, sunlight streaming in golden shafts through the trees. Beside him, Sungo staggered, grabbing his arm to steady himself. Nico, we made it. Nico blinked rapidly, trying to process the swirling colors resolving into the familiar outlines of the Joseon palace walls. They were back. In the past. Sungo glanced around, eyes sharp. We must go quickly. If my father discovers we've returned together. Nico swallowed hard. Then what? Will he try to separate us? Sungo's jaw tightened. My father's power is great, but so is mine now. Nico raised a brow. You sound like a man ready to stage a coup. Sungo cracked the faintest smile. Let's call it carefully applied influence. They crept through the outer palace walls. Servants hurried past, unaware of the time travelers slipping between columns. Nico fought the urge to duck behind every pillar. But Sungo moved with confidence even as he tugged Nico forward. Walk as if you belong here, he whispered. People are less likely to question you. Easy for you to say, Nico shot back under his breath. I still look like a time tourist. Sungo gave him a once-over. Yes. We'll have to fix that. They reached a quiet courtyard. Sungo disappeared into a side room and emerged moments later carrying folded robes of pale blue silk. He tossed them into Nico's arms. Change? Right here? Nico hissed. Yes. The sooner you look like a scholar, the less suspicious you'll be. Nico wrestled himself into layer after layer of cloth. The sleeves hung nearly to his knees. He tried to tie the sash properly, only to find it slipping loose again and again. Sungo stepped forward with a faint grin and began adjusting the layers, his fingers deft. Relax your shoulders. You're too stiff. Because I'm wearing a portable tent. Nico grumbled. Sungo laughed, a real, bright laugh that sparkled in the sunlight. Nico froze, staring at him. What? Sungo asked, brow lifting. Nothing, Nico said softly. It's just. I've never seen you laugh like that. Sungo's smile softened. You're the only one who's ever given me a reason to. The moment hung between them, sweet and fragile. But a voice suddenly barked from behind them. My lord. You've returned. They both spun to see a middle-aged man in official robes bowing low. His eyes flicked toward Nico, lingering a little too long. And who is this? Sungo straightened his spine, voice calm and regal. This is Kim Nico, a scholar who has traveled far to serve our household. The man blinked. I see. Forgive me, but he seems unfamiliar. That's why he traveled far, Sungo said smoothly. See that he's given quarters and clothes suitable to his station. At once, my lord. The official bustled off, still stealing nervous glances over his shoulder. Nico leaned closer, voice barely a whisper. I don't think he bought it. He doesn't need to, Sungo murmured. He only needs to obey. That afternoon, Sungo brought Nico to a private pavilion overlooking a lotus pond. The water rippled in the breeze, pink blossoms drifting across the surface like tiny boats. They sat together, knees brushing. So, Nico began carefully, what happens now? We just live here? Pretend none of this ever happened. Sungo turned serious, fingers tracing idle circles over Nico's hand. We'll need to move carefully. There are spies everywhere. My father may suspect the truth about us. But if we play our roles well enough, he'll eventually leave us alone. And if he doesn't? Nico whispered. Sungo met his eyes steadily. Then I'll fight him. For you. Nico felt heat rush to his face. God, you're infuriating sometimes. Sungo blinked. Why? Because you keep saying things that make me fall in love with you even more. Sungo's lips curved in a soft smile. Then I will say them often. Suddenly, Sungo's expression turned wistful. Do you miss it? Your world. Nico fell quiet, staring out across the pond. Every second. My mom's voice. My friends. Coffee. The smell of asphalt after rain. But he squeezed Sungo's hand. I'd miss you more. Sungo lowered his head until his forehead touched Nico's. Then I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret choosing me. That night, they lay together on a thin silk mattress in a small chamber lit by a single oil lamp. Outside, cicadas buzzed and wind rustled through the trees. Nico ran his fingers through Sungo's hair, marveling at how something so simple, so gentle, could feel like a revolution. Promise me something, Nico murmured. Anything. That even if the whole world tries to tear us apart again, you'll keep finding me. Sungo's answer was a kiss, soft, lingering, full of heat and promise. Always. And though the future remained uncertain, Nico closed his eyes knowing one truth burned brighter than any timeline. Wherever they were, whenever they were, he and Sungo would face it together. Chapter 10, The Clockmaker's Legacy. Years passed, and time wove itself into new shapes around them. Nico became something of a legend in the palace, a strange, sharp-tongued scholar with odd ideas and tools no one had ever seen. He learned to read classical texts, to bow in court, to navigate the endless politicking of Joseon's nobility. And through it all, Sungo stood at his side. They worked together to modernize tiny corners of palace life in secret. Nico introduced tiny inventions, clever locks, more accurate sundials, even a rudimentary water clock. The king, suspicious at first, eventually declared Nico a genius sent by the stars. No one ever knew just how true that was. But the world around them remained a delicate balance. Some nights, Sungo returned from political councils with shadowed eyes. Rumors whispered of factions growing suspicious of his close scholar companion. The threat of discovery hung over them like a sword. Yet in quiet moments, in hidden chambers and moonlit gardens, they carved out a world of their own. One evening, years after their return, Sungo led Nico to the palace rooftop under a sky splashed with stars. Come, Sungo said. I have something to show you. Nico followed, breath clouding in the cool spring air. Sungo knelt beside a lacquered chest and lifted the lid. Inside gleamed a delicate timepiece, the pocket watch, polished and restored, gears spinning like liquid light. Nico stared. The watch survived all this time? Sungo nodded. You carried it here. It belongs to you. Nico reached out, fingers trembling as he brushed the smooth metal. Why keep it hidden all these years? Sungo smiled softly. Because I hoped one day you might want to see your time again. Nico blinked, stunned. Wait, are you saying it still works? Sungo's eyes glimmered. Jaewon returned it to me before he disappeared for good. He said if the day ever came that you wished to return home, you'd know how. Nico stared down at the pocket watch, the ticking filling the silence between them. Memories surged. Neon lights, coffee shops, his mother's laughter. Friends whose faces he hadn't seen in decades now. Could I even survive in that world anymore? He lifted his gaze to Sungo. If I went back, you'd come with me, right? Sungo hesitated. I would try, but I may not exist there. Jaewon warned me. My place in the future is uncertain. Nico felt tears sting his eyes. So you're telling me, even now we're stuck choosing between centuries? Sungo stepped closer, cupping Nico's face in gentle hands. I am telling you that no matter what happens, I will find you, again and again, across lifetimes. Nico let out a shaky laugh. God, you're stubborn. And in love, Sungo said quietly. Hopelessly so. Nico looked at the pocket watch one last time, then snapped it shut. Let's stay right here. Are you sure? Sungo asked. Nico pulled him into a kiss. I've spent enough time running from one century to the next. This is my home now. You are my home. They held each other as the stars spun above them. Somewhere deep in the palace, bells chimed midnight. The wind rustled the roofs, carrying the scent of spring blossoms. And in that quiet rooftop moment, Nico realized something profound. He hadn't merely traveled through time. He'd traveled toward himself, toward the man he was always meant to become, toward Sungo. Many years later, scholars of the Joseon court would write cryptic records of a foreign-born clockmaker who revolutionized timekeeping and introduced strange inventions no one could explain. And though official records made no mention of the young noble who stood beside him, the palace servants whispered stories of two men who loved each other so fiercely, not even the laws of time could keep them apart. Centuries into the future, in a quiet watch shop in Seoul, a young man with dark hair and gentle eyes would one day open a dusty drawer and find an antique pocket watch engraved with the initials N+S. He would hold it up to the neon light, marveling at how the gears inside seemed to glow faintly blue. And somewhere in the shifting weave of time, Nico and Sungo would smile, knowing that love, once forged, never truly disappears, not even across centuries.